In Norway, the Jehovah's Witnesses is government funded. The Jehovah's Witnesses literally get money from the government, and basically it's the same in all of Scandinavia. So why would the government fund religion? I will tell you that, and also how we can use this to our advantage. So first question, why is religion government funded in Scandinavia? It's a historical reason, because back in the day when our ancestors threw out the Pope, then the king got hold on all the infrastructure, all the priest and parish and everything. And try to think about it from a medieval king's perspective. It's a great infrastructure. All of a sudden he can ask them questions about anything that happened in the kingdom, because they were locally represented everywhere. And sadly, the first question they asked was, how many able-bodied men can we put in a uniform? So the Scandinavians started, the priest kept track of all the people, so I can go, actually as a Swede, I can go and trace my family history with no problem 500 years back, because it's all in the record. But the priest also got more and more job to do with the infrastructure. Like you could ask them for crime statistic, you could, if the government were building a bridge, they could send out a priest to check whether it's good done. They got a lot of things to do, and also public announcement and stuff like that. So therefore we had a system that you pay taxes to the government and you pay taxes to the church, which makes sense, because when they were doing a job for the infrastructure, that also means that they deserve to get paid for doing that job. So I don't mind that. And how did this work? Well, imagine if you were Norwegian in the time of the Napoleon War, for instance. So it's a Sunday, you have to go to church and you receive the Lord's blessing and all that. And then they say, today's sermon will be about how to grow potatoes. I'm not kidding. During the Napoleon War, there was a blockade, overseas blockade, and Norway had grown dependent on cheap grain from the United States of America, and we couldn't get that anymore. So our king, or whoever who did it, came up with the idea, we have to teach people how to grow potatoes. And it's a great idea, because you get 4 times bigger yield growing potatoes than grain. So how to convey that message into the general public? Well, they use the churches. So you go to sermon, you receive the Lord's blessing, and today's sermon will be about how to make potato bread. And then it will be how to make potato wine. Potato wine is a real thing. It's very popular among pioneers in Scandinavia. Actually good and very cheap to make. So that's the history. The church used to be a big part of our infrastructure, and still when I was a kid, every time a child was born, you got a birth certificate in paper, and you had to go to the local vicar and give it to him. And I remember he would use a computer to write it down, and then the computer would make a new paper that he put in his archive. Kind of feels like a long time ago now, but they actually used the computer to turn a paper into a new paper they would put in a physical archive. And we lived close to the vicar's house, so all the witnesses, as soon as someone got a kid, they had to go. By law, they were obligated to go and give this birth certificate to the vicar. And the vicar was obligated by law to ask if this child should be baptized as a Lutheran. And the witness was like a contest for all the witnesses to tell him off. It was like a contest who could be most rude to the vicar while he was just doing his job. And they were the grown-ups would often talk about, they probably have a special archive for us, so they know they can execute us. That's actually, thinking back, that first it's not age appropriate. They would tell us that when we were kids, that the Lutheran vicar, the neighbor, had a list of all of us to execute us. And also it's kind of a weird view about other people than witnesses. That so that's how worldly people are. Ooh, you have a newborn baby, 1 year old. I put him in my special archive, the kill archive. Worldly people are not so bad, but that's what we used to believe. And also, when I was drafted by, the process was started with the vicar, because back then he still had the archive, so he would find all the able-bodied men age 17 in my city or village. So they came and got us, and it was a bus ride to Stockholm. We stayed 2 days in Stockholm. I can show you my farm, it's down there. Don't know if you can see it. So obviously that's symbolic for the witnesses that we are drafted by the vicar. Ooh, that's great symbolicism. You know, the big harlot and oh, the blood guilt. So basically what I'm aiming at, the Lutheran Church was and always been a part of our infrastructure. So we had to pay tax to the church. But then what they do just grew less and less and less important. You know, you don't need a vicar to keep track of people. You have Facebook, stuff like that. So the role in modern day society of the Lutheran Church is very small. Like they run cemeteries and stuff like that, but it's still a part of the infrastructure. And then the other thing is that today there's many religions. So I have to pay taxes every year to the Lutheran Church, and that's all included. It's included like the infrastructure they still do and the religious part. But then other religions can claim on behalf of their members those money back from the government. So the witnesses claim to have X amount of members and will therefore get a part of government funding. So that's the reason why, and it's basically the same in the old Scandinavian countries. In Sweden they made an exception and they don't give money to the Jehovah's Witnesses because they are undemocratic. So in Sweden, Jehovah's Witnesses are the only one that don't get any government funding. And I actually think that's wrong, because they are not the only undemocratic organization. Yes, as far as I know, they are the only one that say you are not allowed to vote. But there are other religions that say that women have to ask their husband's permission in order to vote. Or other religions say that you have to vote and we will tell you what to vote. So the notion that Jehovah's Witnesses are the only undemocratic organization, that's very weird. It's just that Jehovah's Witnesses are the biggest and oldest cult, basically. So it took them 100 years to find out that we behave the way we do. And while other smaller cults just fly under the radar. So how can we use this to our advantage then? Well, that's the whole point with the protest in Stockholm now, and this what we call all religions must. Because governments, most governments, have made the resolution to follow human rights and the United Nations charts of children's rights. But organizations don't have to do that. Witnesses can complain when Russia don't follow, respect their human rights, while they themselves, from a legal standpoint, not a moral standpoint, but from a legal standpoint, don't have to abide by those real rules themselves. So, our argument now is that when the government give money to an organization that violates human rights, they are violating human rights. That's our argument. That's what we will argue in court. That the government of Norway, the government of Sweden, government of Finland, all the Scandinavian countries are violating human rights when they fund organizations that violate human rights. It's like you're not allowed to send money to the ISIS. So why would the government be allowed to send money to the Jehovah's Witnesses? Obviously Jehovah's Witnesses are not violent, but still they violate human rights. So that's our argument, that the Scandinavian governments must stop doing this. And that could actually have a great impact, because if the Scandinavians do that, well, then you can take other countries, because some countries give the witnesses charitable status, and that's basically the same as giving them money. Just say, when you build the Kingdom Hall and sell it 5 minutes later, you don't have to pay taxes, and they get tax exempt. That's technically, I would argue, that it's the same as giving them money, and you're not supposed to give them money when they violate human rights. So that's why this hashtag all religions must, I think, actually can have a great impact. Because if there's anything religions really like, it's money. They love money. They do everything for money. They will change every rule in the book as long as they can keep their money. So I'm not here to remove the cult. I'm here to improve the cult. They can believe in, I don't know, New Light or anything. As long as they treat children with respect and women with respect, and they don't violate human rights. So, oh, I love this forest. So that's why we're protesting in Stockholm the 25th of March, and it's only the first one of many protests. They will regret the day they indoctrinated this child. Haha, it's coming back and haunting them. So I hope you'll be there. It will be so fun, so much fun. It's March the 25th, and if you can't come, don't worry. I don't think we'll win the battle against evil cults the first week, so there'll be more protests afterwards. So, and today is Sunday, and I'm not going to the Kingdom Hall. That's the other direction. Actually, I used to go to the Kingdom Hall when I was PMO, because, you know, sitting there and listening to all the bullshit, it's so hard when you know it's bullshit, when you started thinking independently and all that. So what I did, I used to go to the Kingdom Hall over the mountain and through the forest. It takes 2 hours, because then I was tired when I got there, and that made it easier to sit down for 1.5 hours of stupidity. So now I'm just out strolling, looking at some stuff, and then we'll go and play hockey. So I hope you come there 25th, and if you don't, just follow the page, and sooner or later we will have a protest closer to you. And I just want to show you this. I love this landscape here. If I could move up here, I would. It's perfect grazing ground for goats. So, see you in Stockholm.